Today on the show, Netflix has told their employees they plan to continue producing content their progressive employees may not like. In light of what has happened with Disney in recent weeks, does this signal a move back to the middle for corporate America? We'll talk about it. In addition, the latest on a small town in Kansas whose city council voted to remove "In God We Trust" from their police cars. The community is pushing back, and FRC action is helping them do so. We'll tell you about that on the program today as well. At the end of the show, what's really causing baby food shortages? And is there any connection between that and the reason all your favorite restaurants seem to not have enough workers either? That's coming up at the end of the program. But our top story today, the Biden administration has been planning to rescind Title 42, a rule that prevents migrants from entering the U.S. during a health crisis. Now, Arizona, Louisiana, and Missouri led a coalition of 24 states in a lawsuit challenging the Biden administration's efforts to lift Title 42, arguing that their state's healthcare, law enforcement, and education systems would be overly burdened by an influx of undocumented immigrants. On Friday, a federal judge declined to issue an immediate ruling, but U.S. District Judge Robert Summerhays of Louisiana said he would issue a ruling before May 23rd, which is the date the Biden administration has set to lift Title 42. With me now to talk about the situation at the border and more is U.S. Representative Matt Rosendale. He's a member of the House Freedom Caucus, the Veterans Affairs Committee, and the Committee on Natural Resources, and he represents Montana's at-large congressional district. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me on, Joseph.
It's good to have you. What are your thoughts on the continuing debate over Title 42 and how the Biden administration is handling the border and COVID?
Well, Title 42 is just a very, very small part of what we need to make sure we keep in place, quite frankly, to secure our southern border. But the bigger argument is the millions of people that have been coming across the border since the Biden administration took control. We started talking about this in November of 20. Anticipating that this is exactly what was going to happen. Title 42 is a public health standard. It's a public health statute. Again, that's supposed to be used when we have a communicable disease in another country and we have a big influx of people from that country that we're able to keep them from coming in. But the bigger conversation needs to be about the United States gaining or regaining operational control of the southern border. We had nearly 2 million encounters on the southern border last year. We had 750,000 what they call getaways. These are people that actually got into our country without having any type of contact with Border Patrol or law enforcement. So we are having an invasion that's taking place on the southern border right now. And unfortunately, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Mayorkas, is doing nothing about it. He has completely violated his oath of office. A year ago, he said he had a plan. Everybody said, okay, what's the plan? We're seeing his plan play out right now. His plan is to open our border up and allow it to be completely invaded by people from about 160 different nations come in and integrate into our country illegally.
Now, Congressman, you joined 16 Republican colleagues in introducing the Border Safety and Security Act. Tell us more about that and what you hope that will accomplish.
And that was put together by my good friend, Representative Chip Roy from Texas. And it goes directly to the heart of this conversation, and that is about having operational control of our border. And until we have operational control of the southern border, we shouldn't be allowing any of these folks in whatsoever. And we need to use every tool that is available to us in order to gain operational control. The Remain in Mexico policies that the Trump administration had started implementing. I introduced legislation last year to put that in statute so that when people came to our country and tried to claim asylum status while they were waiting a hearing to determine whether they were eligible or not, they weren't released into our country. We need to make them wait in Mexico in order to get to the hearing date. We need to make sure that we have the agreements in place with the Northern Triangle countries to keep those residents there. And again, we need to implement every single one of these provisions, including Title 42, to make sure no one is coming across the border until we can establish operational control. Operational control means that we're not going to have a porous border. The definition is actually in statute. You can look at it, and we don't have that now. Another thing that a lot of people don't talk about, Joseph, are not only all the hardships of the people that are traveling north through other countries to get to the United States and the hardships that they endure, but the hardships that they endure thereafter as they still have obligations to the cartel. And what about the 105,000 people that died in our country last year from drug overdoses, the vast majority of them from fentanyl that came from the southern border? So we have an attack that is taking place on our country right now, a chemical attack, an invasion from the south that we need to address.
Congressman, a couple other stories I want to cover with you today. One is the continued wait at the Supreme Court for their decision in Dobbs. Speaker Nancy Pelosi was asked about this over the weekend, and here was her summary of the current state of the Supreme Court. I want to play clip one, then give you a chance to react.
Who would have ever suspected that a creature like Donald Trump would become president of the United States, waiving a list of judges that he would appoint, therefore getting the support of the far right, and appointing those anti-freedom justices to the court?
Congressman, a fair description of the Supreme Court these days?
No, I think that we have a very, very large difference of opinion, Speaker Pelosi and myself. What we have now are Supreme Court justices that are actually making determinations based upon the Constitution, not upon laws that they would like to see implemented. And what we do know right now is this information was leaked out, and whether the actual leak was a crime or not, I'm not sure. I'm not an attorney, but I can tell you that my understanding of the law is that these people that are protesting on the properties or nearby the properties of the justices, trying to influence the outcome of a court decision, that is a crime.
Congressman, another question I want to get to with you. Energy prices continue to be an issue as the Ukraine war continues to affect that. Other factors as well, one of which has to do with our domestic policy. Over the Biden administration last week canceled major oil and gas lease sales pending before the Department of the Interior. They're saying there was no interest in them. Others are saying differently. What can you tell us about that situation?
Well, I think that it was demonstrated very clearly from his very first day in office that President Biden canceled the Keystone XL pipeline and canceled the leasing opportunities for oil and gas on public lands. And we saw an immediate increase in the cost of energy around the globe. They saw that production was going to go down. Right now, we have reduced our domestic production by 2 million barrels a day. We were at about 13 million barrels a day when Biden took office. We're down to about 11 million barrels a day now. And obviously, the cost of crude oil, or the value of crude oil, is based on that global supply and demand. And the global supply has gone down because our supply has gone down. And of course, the demand has increased because we've come out of COVID. And that's where we have seen the cost of energy almost double. Gas prices now are up at the record highs of about $4.56 a gallon, and diesel prices are up at $5.56 a gallon, right in that neighborhood. And this is hurting the people at the lower end of the income scale the most, and it is directly a result of the poor policies that this administration has put in place. If the Speaker Pelosi wants to talk about decisions being made of people that aren't fit to be in certain places, well, I will tell you right now, what we have what we see on the border, what we see with these oil and gas leases is a lawless administration, because the courts have ordered the Biden administration to open up the leases on the oil and gas for the public lands. The courts have ordered that they start implementing the Remain in Mexico policies so that we can make sure that we don't have an invasion taking place on our southern border. And this administration has demonstrated they have a complete disregard for these court orders, unfortunately.
Congressman Rosendale, one other topic I want to cover with you, Ukraine. We referred to that earlier. Everyone wants Ukraine to beat Russia. Most Americans are not supportive of sending troops to Ukraine, but we're doing a lot of other things for them, including sending money, munitions to them. But Senator Rand Paul had some words of caution on this. I want to get your response to clip 4. Let's play that.
If this gift to Ukraine passes, our total aid to Ukraine will almost equal the entire military budget of Russia. And it's not as if we have that money lying around. We will have to borrow that money from China to send it to Ukraine.
Congressman Rosendale, what's your reaction to that?
Hey, unfortunately, Senator Rand Paul is 100% correct. We don't have the funds to do that. It's going to be borrowed money. Meanwhile, we have an invasion taking place on our own southern border. It's amazing to me the amount of people that are willing to send $40 billion somewhere overseas to secure someone else's border, but they're not willing to do it on our own. Nearly $1 billion of that they voted to send to the Ukraine is going to go to non-governmental agencies that for undisclosed purposes. $54 million is going to go to the CDC. We've already sent almost $14 billion over to the Ukraine. It's just a shame that so many people would put those priorities in place of protecting our own country when, again, we have a chemical attack that's taking place right now with 105,000 lost souls in our own country last year alone.
With the COVID relief packages of the trillions of dollars spent, we know at least $100 billion of that was stolen. There's also been discussions about putting safeguards into any Ukraine aid that is given to make sure that there's transparency, that we know where it's going. Does that continue to be a concern with Ukraine funding?
I think it's an unrealistic expectation that we're going to be able to track those funds once they leave our shore. I just don't see how we're going to be able to do it.
So what do we do?
I voted against the legislation. I mean, that's what I was sent here to do. I was sent here to look out for the best interests of the people in Montana and the people of the United States of America. And while we do not want to see Russia take over Ukraine, and it's very unfortunate to see the innocent loss of life and suffering that's taking place there right now, we have to be realistic about what's going to happen when we are sending money someplace that we don't have control
Congressman
over.
Rosendale, we are out of time. We're grateful for your time today. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Joseph.